Hi, I'm Susan. I'm from Worldpeacefull, and I was listening to Q&A tonight. It was discussing what happened in Australian Parliament with the removal of an Australian Prime Minister who was replaced by Scott Morrison. So Malcolm Turnbull was the Australian Prime Minister through what they called a spill. He actually won the first spill, but they had a second one, which should raise real concerns here in Australia. This video is actually about an issue that was raised in Q&A in respect of women feeling bullied in Parliament in relation to the spill and in other matters. It's raised the question of bullying. Now, this struck a chord within myself, having come from Canberra, which is the nation's capital, and having sat in Parliament many times, observing the bullying in question time, which Alan Jones raised, an interesting commentator who I would imagine would describe himself as very adversarial. A comment that was made by him tonight was, politics is adversarial. Bullying is not about adversarial conflict. Bullying is a repeated negative behaviour, and the intent is to hurt the other. This video is dedicated to investigating bullying because I think it's a widespread phenomena. I certainly know in Australia it's been normalised. People don't understand or recognise what bullying is because it has been absorbed as part of the Australian culture. A comment that was made tonight was about toughening up. I've heard that before, and it certainly comes from Alan Jones's generation, who believe you just got to have a stiff upper lip in Parliament. He doesn't understand the sensitivity of how people can be harmed through verbal abuse, physical intimidation, violence in its many forms, and how people are treated. Exclusion, ignoring people, turning your back on someone. This is all part of undermining and bullying. But before I continue on with this discussion, I want to go still, which is my modus operandi. I'm a peace educator, so for me, stillness helps to provide clarity and centeredness, which is a skill that's been used in order to deal with bullying in actual fact. So I'll go still for a few moments. I actually have words coming up already. Combat, competition, in direct connection with bullying. As I discuss this, I may go still from time to time as I sort of, in a sense, find a peacefulness in order to evaluate this complicated subject. The West comes up in my mind too, in the sense of mind identification. We tend to be very much about the intellect, about knowledge. The winning is one of the core issues here. It's to win over an opponent, over an other. And if we drill down beneath that, it's actually about finding power. We don't use terms like power politics for no reason. What is power? If I can put it into this light, it's actually about feeling safe, and this would be the real meaning beneath the words. Big, strong men will never, ever acknowledge that they are doing what they're doing in order to feel safe. The next word that comes from me is bravado, and I see armour. So protection, self-protection, would be part of the rationale around fighting someone else, bullying someone else in order to frighten them off so that one comes out looking good, looking triumphant, reputation intact, which again underlies all this is this feeling of being secure and safe in a position of advantage, in an unassailable position is the ideal. Top dog, don't mess with me, you'll regret it, you'll pay. These are the words coming up in association with the internal narrative of bullying. I'm going to get you. I'm going to make you suffer. I'm going to get you before you get me. I'm going to put you down so I feel better. Or I'm going to be completely indifferent to you, ignore you, whatever you're saying, I'm not interested in your needs and wants. It's my way or the highway. So it's a very hard line approach. It's not at all sensitive to the feeling of the other person. It's like a fortification. I see a castle, so it's the fortification around that castle. It's the walls. Walls are an extremely good analogy when it comes to bullying because they build walls so they can't feel you. They can't feel it. So they must demonize the other. Words like demonization were used tonight. Which was rather interesting. Real demonization is tarnishing people's reputations. It's really putting them down in such a way that other people disrespect them. There's kind of like what we call glee clubs in conflict resolution. There's a glee club that forms around a particular narrative where the group binds on the basis of agreement in respect of a negative description of someone else. They will justify this is the right fight, this is an important fight, this is a good fight, this is risk management could be a word used. National interest could be another word used. Corporate interest could be another word used. Brand image. There's a whole litany of rationales that can be used in order to justify the undermining, the demonization, the silent treatment, the overt bullying of another or others in order to look better, to be seen as squeaky clean. Now I'm just going to go still for a moment because I want to talk a bit about the reality within human beings of what happens. So I'll just go a little bit still. Okay, this is about destroying people. I felt tears. It's about destroying them, but it's a subtle game of destroying. See, with laws being what they are, if a person physically attacks another person, there's an evidence in the injury or perhaps witnesses, goes to court, it's an assault and battery, it's visible. The type of violence we're seeing today, which is why bullying is becoming more and more of an issue, is that it's more psychological. Intimidation is certainly used in order to silence others, to put them in their place, to ensure that other doesn't cause a problem. It's definitely aimed at that other, and internally that person can feel defenseless, particularly when it's a psychological form of violence, when it's a subtle form of harassment or a subtle form of exclusion, where the person can't quite pin it down. It can feel like shifting sand. And what can happen to someone who gets targeted is they start to blame themselves because they can't quite put their finger on it. They know something's not right, but they can't identify clearly what that is because they may not have experienced it before. It may be hidden in such a way, but internally you know that this is not right. It's causing distress. It's causing fear, stress. There's like a hidden threat there. And what those feelings really reflect is powerlessness, experience where you don't feel safe. The contrast to that would be healthy dialogue, healthy connections, visibility, what we call transparency, where people know where they stand with one another. There's not groups forming that are isolating someone in a very subtle way. I've certainly been in a situation where I was bullied and people sat at another table. It was very obvious. And I have to laugh because they were part of a peace community. And what they taught me was that even those advocating for a peace or conflict resolution had not dealt with their own powerlessness issues, because I always regard a person bullying as a person seeking power. I don't see them as powerful. They wouldn't bully if they were truly a powerful person. They wouldn't need to. They'd be confident enough within themselves to know how to manage a situation, and if they did it with integrity, there wouldn't be a problem. But if they've had patterns of behaviours that have been power over and undermining, not in a normal sense of a management sense where a manager has to direct someone and they may ask a few times because that person hasn't done it. If they do it in a professional way, they're just simply repeating themselves. If it's done in an intimidating way or a condescending way or a threatening approach, that person's going to become increasingly frightened. Now, it's the fear that's the problem here, because as they get more and more frightened, and if there's no conversation around that, that type of anxiety can grow. It can turn into a psychological injury if it's done over time, which means there's a pattern that's been formed where the person feels afraid or they feel undermined, they feel worthless, they feel it's difficult to identify what this is, and it may well give rise to feelings of suicide because the inner world reflects the outer world. That powerlessness, that worthlessness turns inward. The person then doesn't believe they want to continue on. That's why this is not about a simple adversarial conflict where two rivals are coming at an issue from opposite ends. That's different. The bullying is a repeated thing, and it's done to undermine and harm the other. It's a definite dominant type of behaviour to suppress, to shut down, to instill a sense of fear in the other so they do as they're told. So it's an authoritarian approach. Adversarial conflict is, in my opinion, fine. I think it's okay for people to have arguments. It's okay for people to have different points of view. And sometimes people do get angry and they say things they don't mean. That's not necessarily bullying. That may be losing it. That might be losing control, because this conflict has escalated due to something someone has said. It's like putting logs on the fire in a verbal sense. The logs keep going on the fire as an upmanship to the dispute, as each party is trying to win over the other. So they're looking for facts, they're looking for things to prove the other wrong. They get heated, they get passionate. They might get really angry because they feel they're losing the argument. They might get so angry and say a few names and leave. Now, you could say that's verbal abuse, and yes, if that's aiming to hurt the other person, that is definitely what it is. It's harming that other, and that is bullying in actual fact. But going back to the idea of people getting heated and having a fight, that can just be a difference of opinion. It's when there is an attempt to hurt the other. And in Australian culture, certainly they might say you're an idiot, you know, what the hell do you know? I know better. This happened to me, you're wrong. They might swear. This is what I mean by the normalisation of bullying in Australia, this verbal abuse. In conflict resolution, the teaching there is to actually start to name what's going on. So when you say this, I feel this, and what I prefer is that. So when you speak to me in a rude or disrespectful manner, what I require is to have a fair and sort of fair conversation without yelling and unkind things being said. So going back to that analogy, it's when you speak to me like this, I feel threatened, I feel frightened, I feel distressed. And what I prefer is for you to state your case, but in a way that's respectful. That could be a good way of putting it. I'm here to listen to what you have to say, but when you speak like that, I don't feel you're listening. You know, there's ways and means at which you can nail down what's being said here. I'm starting to get more and more clear about identifying the feelings that I'm feeling. And it's a lot to do with my approach now to conflict. I very much believe in the work of Byron Katie, which is not dissimilar to cognitive behavioural therapy, where when something is happening to me, I start to investigate how I'm feeling. That's not to say that the other person's not being disrespectful, not being unkind or cruel, undermining or bullying. Those things may well be the description of that interaction. But in the nature of the peace work, the idea is to actually explore how I'm feeling. Now, this modus operandi is quite different from the traditional views of conflict, you know, where we have a fight. If we were to try to resolve it, you get one party state how they feel, the other party's listening, then you get them to swap, the other party talks about how they feel, the other party listens, questions are asked, apologies are made, problem resolved. In respect of the peace work, what we say is, okay, what am I feeling here? I'm feeling frightened about approaching this conflict. Now, I could say that I feel intimidated by that person. That would be untrue. I am frightened that they're going to hurt me because I'm sensitive. And that could well have something to do with low self-esteem. It could have something to do with childhood patterns where one has been attacked a lot and put down a lot, and there's a fear of that happening again. Feeling defenseless is a big one. Feeling you cannot defend yourself. Say that person's very good verbally and you're not very good at saying what you need to say, then you're going to feel vulnerable in the space of a discussion without some form of mediation to help facilitate that. But going back to the inner feeling, what it really is emotions that are trapped and almost always have had their root in childhood. Because over the course of our life, these earlier experiences fade and fade and fade to the point where we don't even notice, but we might react. Let's say someone like your father turns up and the father was very abusive. You may go straight automatically into a reactive mode where you combat that person. Those fears come up without you even thinking. It's so quick. It looks like it's in the unconscious, but it's actually trapped emotion within the body. The physical body actually holds the emotions. In the muscles, when people go to masseurs, things get released. You might hold tension in parts of the body. We're holding the pain in parts of the body. So the emotions are incredibly powerful. The feeling center is how we navigate life. We can sense things. It's often underdeveloped because we tend to discount emotions and feelings as sort of too subtle, too misty, not factual, because it's a sensing. It's a different form of intelligence. We have an intellectual intelligence and we have an emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is going to gauge a situation before it even happens. They're going to be sensing the mood of the person. They're going to be very quick to identify their own feelings. And they will have the intelligence to know how to navigate through the unseen. Women are usually very good at this because we have innate abilities in order to sense that have come from generations and generations of women who have had to develop these skills in order to protect children. Men, on the other hand, have tended to have that. Women have protective roles too, but men also have had to develop more physical protections in order to stay safe against other men. This is why we have wars and very aggressive testosterone-driven experiences. And I say with testosterone with love and respect, that's just a biological difference that does actually create more aggression. And it's to frighten off an opponent. It has its roots in really prehistoric times. Sort of even Australopithecus comes to mind, you know, very early, primitive caveman day. There was the frightening off of the other, and we see it certainly in the animal kingdom, these displays of aggression in order to keep safe or to mark territory. Going back to the female intuitive side, this is a highly developed, highly sensitive mode of sensing. That's why women are often quite good at knowing what's going on or having a sixth sense about something, because they're very much in the feeling center. When you're in the feeling center, you're not suppressing it. You actually have it integrated within you. And because from a feminine perspective, we are not discouraged from being emotional or being who we are. I mean, some young women might be discounting it, trying to follow men, but I would encourage all women to come to full expression of their full intuitive emotional capacity, or even faculty could be a good word. So in respect of the bullying issue, women tend to be very sensitive. They can pick up on the undercurrents very fast. I'm just going still for a moment because I'm actually feeling that. We're very good at sculpting, if you like, the unseen environment. We're very quick in that regard. And we're often looking for the true meaning of something. What are they really saying? What are they really doing? And I guess that in its primitive core would be that sense of safety through sensing emotionally, feeling what's going on to stay safe. So in bullying situations, people who are often targeted are ones that people perceive are vulnerable. There is a general sense that women are vulnerable. That's why the whole issue of domestic violence has come up. But there's also psychological issues where you get very aggressive women who would be verbally abusing men, for example, who might be very gentle men. So I certainly don't see it as cut and dry that women are the victims and men are the bullies. I think bullying happens across the board. I've certainly witnessed it. And I've noticed that there appears to be a predominantly aggressive approach to the other to win. I think the winning is competitiveness. Perfectionism is also a really significant part of bullying. Those who are perfectionists have to have things done their own way, and they will control their environment in order to feel good. Going back to the Byron Katie approach, it's more to feel good is by changing the thought process. It's not about changing the world around you. It's about changing your thoughts. And that doesn't mean people don't speak up about things that are happening in a truthful way. I'm a great believer in speaking up because I think the suppression is extremely unhealthy. I think it has massive ramifications for mental health. It's also not honest. It provides a false belief in a tacit consent if we're silent. In workplaces, people are very afraid to speak up because they're frightened of losing their jobs. They don't want their colleagues to cut them off or to be excluded, or promotion becomes null and void because another has taken a certain view of you because you've spoken up. There could be a certain culture where speaking up is viewed as dissent, disloyalty, inappropriate. We should all be just agreeing. Just agree, you're making us uncomfortable. In the approach that I'm interested in, nobody's making you uncomfortable. You have to look into your own thoughts of what is the discomfort you're feeling, which is really the mask of what is the fear that you're feeling. And let's explore that. What are you frightened of? And with fear, these are imagined things from a future or a past. In the actual moment, we're going through an experience and we're thinking very fast. It's usually in the aftermath of that moment that more fears arise, that it might repeat in the future, so we try to avoid it. So avoidance becomes a strategy, but you can actually attract what you push away because you're frightened of this thing repeating or it happening again. I take the view of having courage to face what you fear. I've come to understand as a person who's dealing with conflict transformation that in the facing of all conflict, you start to see through it. There's a terminology that I often use, which is what you resist persists. What you look at disappears. And what this means is it's the resistance that, if you like, creates that conflict. It's like two sides pushing against is resistance. The flow is more of a dance. And that means you can still be in a disagreement with someone, but the reason I rock like this is because I'm going with the flow. Right. So you really think the right wing, I'll use that for fun because of tonight's program, which was all about what was going on in politics and the conservative elements. And of course, this clash of different viewpoints in a hotbed of a parliament is probably a good forum in which to look at bullying, because one side, the right wing, believes they're totally right and they have very firm beliefs about that. And these beliefs may well come back, as has been indicated tonight, from their generation. They could be more conservative. They might say, oh, stop being a sook. What? You need nanny state? They might use all that sort of term. You can just imagine, you know. And we need strong this, strong that. We need to control this and control that because it's all out of hand because we think the world is unstable. If we don't control it, it's going to be chaos. Now, those are the narratives that may well not be questioned narratives. And that's not to say on the other side of politics there's not unquestioned narratives. There would be. They think, we're fighting the good fight, we're representing the people, we're the unions, we care about social justice. So we're going to go out there and fight the management. That's a very adversarial, that's a very resistant process. It becomes quite militant at its extreme. So both sides are resisting the other. Now, if we take the democratic approach, we can say, well, within a democratic forum, the modus operandi in that is that everyone's views are accepted in this forum. You may not like the other's view, but they have a right to say it. So what we do is we allow for that. We allow for those clashing up of ideas. And as I saw on Q&A tonight, I think it's good because there are some very specific viewpoints that are not experiencing a divergent opinion around them. They tend to formulate groups who agree with them. If you're in a party, they may have been in that party 10 to 20 years, and that's the narrative, that they're absolutely, virtually sunk into the DNA. This is both sides of politics. So they're very staunch in their views, and they're right, the other's wrong. The adversarial conflict, which was talked about tonight as quite acceptable within these forums, is actually, I'm right, you're wrong, let's fight. It's about winning. It's very much like a Colosseum type idea where there's got to be a victor and there's got to be someone that loses. We see the same in competitive sport, which is why it's popular. People like to, yay, there's my team, and then they find lots of friends because they all agree, and then they've got the enemy to fight. And there's a great sense of solidarity in the team that's winning, and the losers, of course, are weepers, and they taunt them. This is harassment and bullying played out even in the sports arena, which is considered normal. The adversarial approach doesn't necessarily create a space for problem solving. Edward de Bono, one of the top 50 thinkers in the world, came up with lateral thinking, which was to create a point at which you have a departure from a straight line type of thinking. That departure might come out from the right here, like a right angle. So he called things like Poe. He used very interesting terms to make people step out of this argumentative type of thinking into a more lateral type of thinking. He had the 6 thinking hats method, where you'd wear, for example, the white hat if you want to examine the facts together. So the whole parliament would come together with the white hat on to solve the refugee crisis, for example. What is the problem here? Is the problem border protection? Is the problem that they're going to overrun our country? Is the problem them taking our jobs? Is it better, based on those problems, to put them on islands excised out of the Australian sort of boundary? So they become excised. They were Australian islands, but they're excised. They've changed the boundaries, so they become illegal when they come into the country. So we have all sorts of ways of changing things to term things legal or illegal, which makes it right or wrong. And again, that adversarial mindset is right and wrong. So you have to watch very carefully for narratives that go into black and white type thinking. The problem-solving approach is not about that. It's about getting to the root of the actual problem. Now, if I was to extend this discussion further, I might then go, okay, where are they coming from? What part of the world? So let's just say Iraq. There was a lot of flows because I actually went to a detention centre. Iraqi refugees, there were Afghan refugees. There was actually an American refugee. Well, I don't know if she'd call herself a refugee. She's not really. She overstayed her visa, I remember. I thought she was with the International Red Cross at the time. There was also people from the Pacific Islands, Solomons, and other parts of the world, which I noticed. So why are they fleeing? Okay, well, we certainly know in the case of Iraq and Afghanistan, we're talking war. Okay, well, what's causing the war? Now, there's many ways of looking at that. If we were in a problem-solving bipartisan committee, we could start investigating, okay, what created the war in Afghanistan? Okay, it's gone back. It's gone back to 1989. It's even gone back further than that. Why did those wars start? What was the interests in those wars? The latest war, what was that really about? Was it about energy? Why did they go in there? Was it about restoring or establishing, it's not even restoring, establishing democracy? Is it democracy that's been established? What do the people want? So I think in this way because I'd be actually exploring what's going on the ground, but I'm also looking at what are the roots of it. Is it political? Is it business interests? Is it to do with the drug trade, given that there's now opium grown there? What caused the flows? Okay, once we get a clear idea of what caused the flow, how can those flows be stopped at the source? Because if you were to interview refugees, the majority of them, if not all of them, will say they'd prefer to stay at home. And this is not to say we don't want them. I'm very happy personally to have a multicultural society. I actually love that. And I find they actually have attributes we Australians don't have. I think they're very respectful and they're very hospitable people. They're incredibly creative, very communal. They know how to treat each other. They don't have all these intellectual arguments. They actually sing music and they recite poetry. Very different cultural, because they're more of a creative, certainly in the Afghan case and Iraqi case, whom I've connected with when I've done clowning in various places. They have more artistic mindset. And of course, yes, there's things we like and don't like, but that's not really relevant. We learn to coexist with differences, and that's part of a democratic, tolerant society. It's not about trying to create everybody in our image, which some people think makes them feel good. It's about learning about the other. It's about absorbing what's good in that association. It's about learning from each other. It's not about forced compliance or making things very difficult for people and saying you should be this and you should be that. Well, no, they're not. Everyone's different. So going back to those flows, people would prefer to not leave their countries, but they might need to flee because in that particular situation they're fleeing persecution. I know in the case of Afghanistan it was completely ransacked. People had nowhere to go, they had to leave. They were also told stories, so there are stories being told by those who wish to exploit them. I certainly have heard the story that they believed coming to Australia there would be money growing on trees. This was a story told, they believed it because they didn't know. And of course, why wouldn't they want to come for that? It's a whole different matter when they get here. It's not quite what they believe. They thought the material life was the better life, but in actual fact, I think many of them start to realise the culture they have is actually very rich. However, this is how we come together in a consultative, collaborative, creative committee, is to clash up the ideas on working out the problem. But you have to interview them, you have to do the research, go to the source, find out what's going on, and find ways in which this problem can be resolved optimally. And that's also from a financial basis too. You don't go and put them on an island spending millions and millions of dollars where they're suffering mental health issues. There's human rights issues in that. There's humane issues in that. You wouldn't treat your dog that way. Why would we treat human beings that way? Because there's a political situation hanging from that. We want to be seen as tough on this. So they suffer. It's a lot like that whole mentality around prisons. We put people into prison, make them suffer, punish them because they've done the wrong thing. Well, is that the right approach for jails? What is causing the problem in that person? Let's say it was violence. Where did that come from? Was their own family violent? Was there a parent that was violent? They've modelled on it. Do we blame that person for that modelling? Or do we educate them? Do we teach them experientially how to relearn how to interact with people? When you get angry, you can release your anger, but not on a person. You can use a punching bag. You can bring it out through poetry. You can bring it out through song, through creativity. Creativity is an excellent way of moving discordant energy, but we're not taught that. Then we sit down and dialogue, resolve the matter, or put it down on paper and we question it. What is going on for me? And the same applies really for refugee issues. You can sit down and work it out. But to hurt people is another matter. And when we see this being internalized as being tough, being strong, we need to question that. Is bullying tough and strong when it harms another person? Are we responsible if we're the one advocating for approaches that directly cause mental health issues? Can we sit still enough with ourselves to recognize something within us that's fearful? Can we question it? Can we come to understand the truth of it? This is the hard work of resolving conflict. I often say too in my blogs, to thine own self be true. These are not throwaway words. They're incredibly important. If you're busy all the time, if you're engaged in filling every gap because you don't want to be alone with yourself, if you think, oh, it's too heavy to go there, these are just ways of deflecting or avoiding yourself. They're the little lies we tell ourselves. Deception, avoidance, changing the truth of the matter because we don't want to face ourselves and be wrong. If we're wrong, we're a failure. If we're wrong, people won't respect us. We are embarrassed by that. These all need to be questioned because throughout this experience of life, you are always going to be right and wrong. And what is right and wrong? Is it the group that validates what you're saying mean it's right because they'll agree? We might say it's right to throw refugees into jail and everyone agrees. Is that right? Morally, is that going to serve us? A much wiser approach to this is, does it serve me or does it not? Does it serve them or does it not? What are the objectives? What are the outcomes we're seriously seeking here? Questioning are the portals that will take you to the answers that will resolve the situation in a way that creates what I call a win-win. The adversarial win-lose is all about power. It's about being better. It's about superiority. These are all false teachings that have come to us from generations where people have believed the victor takes the spoils, the loser banished. These are traditional old paradigms that have framed our civilization since really the beginning of patriarchy. Prior to that was matriarchy in actual fact, which was a different form of governance. This was a governance based really around the family. Harmony in actual fact is, I think, the best way to resolve all problems, coming from a base of harmony. This is not a base of, I want to beat you, I'm better than you, I'm going to prove you wrong. It's a base of, I'm at peace with myself, I don't want to win, I am seeking the best for both of us because I want harmony, and harmony, certainly for myself, is about love. Harmony is about dancing. It's actually about singing. It's actually very much inherent within the arts that reflect harmony. That's why we go to operas. That's why we listen to music. That's why we go dancing. That's why we have fun, we play. These are all different manifestations of the same thing, which is making peace with life. The bullying issue is not about peace. It's about suffering, and it's about imposing that suffering on others. It's about avoidance of responsibility. It's about lack of leadership. It's about lack of self-knowledge. It's unconscious. We go about it, we flick it off, we do it again and again, and this becomes patterns of abuse that we normalize and say, oh, well, they deserved it. No one deserves to be abused. And if a person is suffering, is it not a sign of a civilized society to reach out to that other who's suffering rather than judge them and say, oh, well, you did it to yourself. Go eat cake. Can we rise above that type of thinking? And we respond to that person suffering. That response means that we are sensitized to our community, to our friends, to our family. That sensitivity is a natural navigation which creates community harmony. Now, when it's cut off because of the mind over the heart, so you might just say, oh, ignore those feelings. I'm going to put them in a box. Compartmentalization, it's called. We put it in a box and we ignore it. That box might have been there for 20 years. It's still there, but you ignore it. But what I will say to you, this is how unconsciousness develops. It means you're no longer conscious of it, but it's sitting there. Something can trigger it. So whenever anybody reacts, it's actually a triggering is what that truly is. When you get triggered, it means something within you that's not been healed, not been dealt with emotionally, gets triggered. It comes up very fast and you react. And you'll know it. You'll be watching the TV and you're reacting and reacting. That's something within you that's being triggered. It's a good word, trigger, because that's what we use even with guns. You trigger. They pull back the trigger because they're about to fire off a shot. Now, that shot can be verbal. Nonetheless, it's still a form of combat where one has to win over the other. So going back to harmony, this will be, slowly, this will be the future for all of us. It's actually an evolutionary step away from combat. People go, well, life will get boring if we're not fighting and mixing it up. No, life gets more exciting when you come from a base of harmony because you actually are more present in the world around you. You actually get to discover the people you're with. You get to discover yourself and the various latent talents sitting there. You become still enough to be at peace with yourself and your world and your planet. That then opens up other pathways to discovery and exploration, which is unlimited in actual fact. We can lock ourselves down in the drama in order to feel some sense of energizing because our lives are dull and we may feel that they're even meaningless unless there's a fight happening, a drama going on over there. We go, oh, look at that. Or we watch the television, being fed by the drama in order to feel we know what's going on. Well, that's not what's going on. What's going on is really within you. It's your potential that's sitting there waiting to be realised. So the bullying issue can be the thing that distracts us from really who we are. It can distract us from the problem solving, which is necessary in order to grow as human beings. The negative aspects of denial, of deflection, of avoidance actually prevent ourselves from the gold, finding the gold, which is in the dispute, waiting for you to discover. It's a gold. I call it the fool's gold. Everything that comes to you and in the form of a conflict is an opportunity in disguise. It's actually there to get your attention, to look at yourself. That's why it's there. Life is not necessarily what you think. It's a far more intelligent experience when you sit more quietly and become present with yourself. And I'll finish this video by saying that the program I created was Real Hope, Real Hopes in actual fact. And this is a values-based peace, non-violence and anti-bullying program which I created for children, but it can also be delivered to adults. Responsibility means the ability to respond, not react, as we would have in a combat situation. We're thoughtfully meeting with that situation. Empathy means it's not all about me, where I'm only going me, my needs aren't being met, I don't care about what you think, it's all about me. Empathy is I'm standing in your shoes, imagining how do you feel? This is respect. It's like, well, maybe I'm wrong. This is humility. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're right. Or I might even say, maybe there's something for me to learn from this. I'm not quite sure what the truth of this is, but I'm open to standing in their shoes to feel what it's like to be them. If I was in their position, what would I be doing? This is actually joining with the other. They are me. Awareness. I open my eyes, I'm looking around, I'm noticing. I close my eyes and I open my eyes and I look to see what I can't see. What didn't I see? Because our perception is selective. Awareness through stillness, like you saw during this video, is heightened when you become still. I quieten the mind. I see a rainbow. That's not going to come up if I'm just talking and not becoming still. Real hope is actually a rainbow. It's all colours. Love, it comes immediate to me as truth. And of course, real hopes is what I'm going through. Honesty is the next one. Truth and love are very much the same thing. They are the same thing. But love shares, cares, reveals and heals. Love is the one that extends the hand out in compassion. This was a term mentioned tonight on Q&A. Compassion. Love shares. I share what I'm saying with you right now. I care. That's why I'm doing it. I reveal. I'm revealing myself because of this love. Shares, cares, reveals and heals. You heal as you go, oh my gosh, I see what you mean. Yes, I can see that. That's a form of healing. We join. Honesty is the truth. Speaking the truth. We're often very deceptive. Conflicts are often around proving I'm right no matter if I'm wrong. Can you be honest enough to say, you know what? I see your point. I might be wrong. I'm really glad that you were able to show me where I was wrong, because I'm here to learn. I'm not here to win. I'm here to learn. I want to expand who I am. This is being honest. I made a mistake. You really showed me something here. Unfortunately, litigation comes around many things, and this is what shuts down honesty. People are too frightened to admit the truth because they don't want to be sued. That's a real problem for us. Oneness is we're one world, one breath. We're all breathing the same oxygen that every single person on the planet's ever breathed. This is one family, one world that we're all living in. And yet we treat it like it's all separate islands. We say this is a nation state, that's a nation state. We get into combat because we think we want resources, we want to win business interests. But what we don't get is as we denude the earth from all these resources that we extract, we're actually killing the planet. And within that, obviously, life support systems, we're killing ourselves. Problem solving takes you from this rampant consumerism, materialism, back to what is the need that drives this behavior of not enough? Where am I empty that I need more and more and more? More status, more money, more prestige, more contacts, more moments sitting on boards, more influence, so that I can sit back at the end of the day and say, I'm a success, I'm better than you. Is that going to save the planet? Or is this becoming a mindset unable to feel its connection with the actual planet that actually produces the very things, the very resources that are the inputs to that production, that are feeding you? If we're over-consuming, which we are, we need 4 planets. If we all live like the United States, we need 4 planets in order to meet that demand. That's not possible. That means it's a race to the bottom, yet there's no real movement around changing the philosophy, the thinking that drives it. We're still going on about economic growth, which is a misnomer in this current situation. Gross national happiness is the key. When you're happy, you won't need so much. But then we get frightened. We won't get enough product. We won't get enough profit. We need more widgets in order to keep maximising profit, because shareholders want dividends. They want interest on dividends. Growth, growth, growth. Planet can't do it. So we will hit a wall, and we're hitting a wall. In fact, now we're hitting walls, tipping points. But do we have to be stopped by natural limits? Can we not reassess the way that we think? Can we not problem solve this collectively? I don't see, in a lot of ways, I don't see the other cultures as different from me. I don't go, oh, you're a Russian, you're a US, you're a Fijian, you're a Spanish, you're Mexican, you're a this, you're a that. Who cares? We're one family. You are me. That's what I see. How do we overcome our cultural barriers, our gender barriers, our religious barriers that limit us? How do we come into the middle ground where we're all the same? We breathe the air, we all eat, we all dance, we all make love. We all have a desire for children to be happy. These are the places we unify. That's where you focus if you want peace to be the underlying basis for a sustainable world, which it is. Peace is our true nature. That's where we anchor with the natural world when we're at peace. We're not grabbing for things. So that was the oneness. Peace is the next one, which I've just talked about, yin and yang, balancing the opposites is peace. In truth, peace is truth. When you understand and see with clarity without a story, you sit in the stillness, that is peace. There's no movement, yet things get done. Stillness is not idleness. It's not doing nothing. It's actually incredibly active because there's not confusion around it. It's clear. It taps into intelligence. This is not truly understood yet. Enjoyment, of course, is a natural. It's the joy inside, the enjoy. Joy is within you. Pleasure is pleasure seeking. That's more ego gratification. The joy is when you are quietly doing or being in alignment with something you absolutely love. I love writing. I love poetry. I love walking. I love doing what I'm doing right now. This is a oneness. This is a peace. This is a joy that I feel right now. That's how I know I'm following my true rhythm. I'm not being paid to do this. I don't feel I have to do it. It's naturally. I just chose to do it because I'm following the prompts, is the way I call this. When you follow your true nature, you just follow the prompts. You may not know what you're going to do in the next 10 minutes. It comes, and it's always fulfilled would be the right word. Being a fool, I would say fulfilled, because I see humour in that. Enjoyment, the clown, laughter, spontaneity, these are the things some people call undisciplined. They're not. They're truly, it's like the spring. The wellspring is what humour, fun, love, happiness, joy, these things bubbling up naturally are not being controlled is like a spring, a wellspring. And it just bubbles up. It's why we laugh and we play and we get really silly and let these things happen. This is wonderful. The last one is service. Now, real hope for the work that I do is the integration of values, which creates a full sense of potential within oneself. Now, I have an S on the end for service, because once you're in full integration, you start to serve the world. I'm sort of in a place in my life right now where I feel myself in service to the world. I've already been through a great deal in my life where I've been responsible, empathetic, aware, loving, honest, oneness, peace, and joy, had lots of joy. And now I'm into service, which is to share the bounty of what I've learned now, and to start to speak up more for the world that I'm wishing to see in the future, which is a very loving, beautiful world. So for those who want to check out my websites, www.worldpeacefull, F-U-L-L, so it's worldpeacefull, it's got 2 L's on the end, .com. There is no AU. So www.worldpeacefull.com. Go to school programs, go to anti-bullying if you want to check out Real Hope. I have also World Peaceful Empowerment, which is an anti-bullying. So that's http://biz.worldpeacefull.com. Now, if you're interested in happiness, which I am, my clowning stuff and my vision for a Happiness Australia is http://ha.worldpeaceful.com, and that's ha. I like that one. I have many fruits that have come out of my understanding of bullying and conflict, but predominantly I'm interested in transmuting that and allowing that to permeate into a vision of practical reality where we are fully in harmony with ourselves and with the world. And I believe that's absolutely necessary. It's time to heal the wounds from the past. It's time to take responsibility for our own unhappiness and discord, to forgive those who we feel have caused us harm, and to start to really work towards really optimizing our full potential on the planet. It's actually unlimited once we become more still, once we've healed these issues from the past, once we've moved into a different paradigm, which is more holistic, which sees the world as one family, one breath, one life. Then it's going to get very, very exciting. So with that, my dear friends, thank you very much for enduring my hour. I hope you liked it. This is my gift to you. Why do I give this to you? Because I love you. And I'd love to see you happy. Your happy destiny is unavoidable. Links to my websites will be on this video down below. Thanks. Bye.